Hi there, everyone. Today we're going to run through the P6-QA tool. This tool we developed probably about 5, 6 years ago now, and the idea is to help you understand how well your P6 schedules are put together right inside the P6 tool. So I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald, and I'm joining you today from Calgary. And doing the heavy lifting, showing the software will be Supermelia. She's joining us from Wyoming today. So let's run through some common struggles that we usually face when we're working in P6. So we're trying to put together schedules, maybe one, maybe many, and we could have contributors with completely different ideas on what a good schedule is. What level of detail should we have? How long should activities be? That sort of thing. So the idea of quality can range drastically. So over the years, different groups have tried to put standards in place and whatnot, and that's fine, but they don't always match the standards that you might need or the group that you're working with. So we have this common struggle. So I thought I'd just ask a quick question just to get going. How do you deal with schedules, especially if you're receiving them from contractors or whatnot? So let's just go ahead and I'll start this poll question. Are you in a position where you receive schedules from contractors, have been mandated to adhere to specific business practices? Now, it will depend, of course, on your role. If you're a contractor, you won't be in this boat. It's more of an owner question. And that's where it becomes a challenge because you might be working with completely different levels of groups. Let's say you're working with a large international engineering company versus a small local contracting discipline, specialty discipline company. Their skill set can be very different. So, of course, we want to try and generate some sort of standard quality approach so that the schedules we're receiving, the schedules we're critiquing, the schedules we're putting out to our clients have some sort of consistent approach to them. So the idea is we want to introduce some standards. We want to take away the subjectivity of what is a good schedule. So we also want to make it collaborative so that you're trying to build a project team, you're trying to deliver on a project, you want that trust and that confidence in the schedule that you're actually going to complete the work on time. I mean, ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that we can predict all the work so we can get the job done on time. Now, on time is one piece. Resourcing and costing can also be two other facets that you're wanting to look at. And depending on what you're doing in P6, P6-QA will help you with that. Okay, so that's a good thing. Sometimes we have clients who don't necessarily do resourcing and costing because they're not sure how they can do all that in P6. So let me ask another quick question. How do you currently check your schedules? So what is your process? Do you look at them manually? Do you maybe put together a grid in Excel? We used to do that way back at the early days when we used to help clients. Do you receive outside contractor schedules that you have to critique? Do you use a tool like QA? From what I know, there's really only one main competitor out on the market, and very expensive, and it's a third party that you usually do. Or do you get third parties to come in and help you evaluate? So that's certainly a service that we've provided over the years, which was another reason we thought, this is kind of crazy to have us come in, help critique a schedule because there's a gate that you've got to go through, and we don't know much about the project. And then maybe all the recommendations don't necessarily get followed up. So that's a weakness with using third-party outside contractors, consultants to review your schedule. And then does it make it more reliable and consistent when you use that strategy? Okay, so the basic thing is you want the schedule to be one that you can trust, that will hold together under scrutiny, that is consistent in terms of highlighting if there will be any bottlenecks. So you don't want really long activities and really short activities. Generally, you want a nice balance. And you get one part of the team who gives you all this detail, and then another part of the team doesn't want to give you very much detail at all. So that's what you want to avoid, and it's not always easy to arm wrestle that into proper business processes that you can make sure people will adhere to. So let's talk about how P6-QA will help you with being able to take a look at schedules. So how it works is the tool is embedded inside of P6. So from a P6 user perspective, it looks like you're in P6. We did that on purpose. We wanted it to be easy to deploy and lightweight and shareable across the whole group. That was our big objective with QA. We didn't want you to have only one scheduler who had the very expensive software tool and they became the bottleneck. So that was a very big thing for us. We wanted it to be easy to use, easy to run right inside P6 so that you didn't have so many steps. So that was a very big thing for us. You can build out the different metrics that you want to look at. Okay, so schedule time-based is obviously number one thing. Everyone uses P6 for that purpose, so schedule will be number one. You'll be able to see logic, ties, leads and lags, durations. So those are fundamentals, starting points. Then, of course, you want to be able to go further. You want to be able to look at things like whether there's constraints. Now, if there are they hard and soft constraints? What kind of constraints are they? Now, if you're using resources and costs, then you can go deeper and you can start to analyze those things and flag them as well. And then, of course, you need to look at updating quality as well. So somebody might give you a schedule today, but once they start updating them, you've got to make sure that you're looking at whether all the updating components are also holding together as time goes on. Okay. So as I mentioned, there are different standards out in the market, and you're going to see that P6-QA covers the bulk of them. Maybe not all of them in every circumstance, but the bulk of them. And so it's a really good, strong starting point depending on the metrics, the standards that you might need to be adhering to, depending on the kind of work that you do. Now, the other thing that P6-QA does is you can add your own additional metrics. So we work with our clients when we deploy this, and we run through the things that they want. If they want to add certain business processes for certain projects, we help them do that. It takes maybe a few hours of work to introduce a new metric. So that's something to keep in mind. They're not that hard to add, and then you've got them for all the projects that you might want to deploy them on. So we've gone further with metrics on project level data, resource and expense level data, and things like whether a code is there or whatnot. You can introduce those sorts of metrics. So you can expand what you do with it. And of course, then the key thing is you don't necessarily need the exact same standards across your whole set of projects. So if you have maybe a small 2-week OpEx project that you're doing versus a large 2, 3, 4, 5-year CapEx project, it's going to be different, the kind of things that you want to be looking at. And if you're doing maybe a 30 days shutdown, turnaround, outage kind of project, and you're down to the hour where you're managing very, very closely the work scope, you're going to also want a different sort of set of standards. So you're going to see in QA, you're able to introduce different standards for different kinds of projects. And you can also do different standards at different stages and phases of the project. Okay. The tolerance for things not matching perfectly to your criteria can vary over time. So Sue's going to show you how those things work, and we can go into quite a bit of detail, and she'll show you some of the fancier things that we've added, different statistical counts and different calendar checks and things like that. So she'll run through in detail to give you an idea of how P6-QA works, right? She'll show you live. Okay. All right. So I think I'll hand it on over to you, Sue, and then you can run through. Let me just transfer the session over. Okay, coming your way.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Nicole.
Okay.
I'm going to share my screen so that we can take a look at the tool live. So I'm in a P6 client right now. However, you can also run this tool within web. So no matter where you're wanting to work with this, you can do it in either place. So, and in this particular window, I'm going to just move this down a bit. I am showing the project level view. So, and this is at the EPS level, and it's showing kind of a snapshot of the schedule quality indicators that have been produced by the QA tool. So we're seeing a whole bunch of projects where, of course, it's been the QA tool has been run. And this is actually displaying the results of the quality metrics we want to look at. So essentially, I mean, pretty easy. Uh, we're seeing that we have some red, which means it's not so good, and we're green, which is positive, and that is good. We also have another indicator that we don't see right now, which is a yield sign or a yellow indicator, which is a warning. This also can be set on those types of projects or metrics where you want to have a maybe a indicator where you are red over a certain amount, you're yellow to warn that you're getting close to that, and a green meaning you're under a certain amount. So um, that is what the yellow would indicate. So essentially, this is just a quick dashboard of how well you're doing with each one of your projects. Um, so QA can be run in different ways. First of all, we have our yes no column. This tells QA whether it needs to pick up that project and actually run the metrics on it. So if you're not ready to start running it, you can keep it blank. If you have been running it and perhaps your project might be over, you can set it to no, and it won't run that project anymore. We also have that ability to schedule a frequency in which you want QA to run on a particular project. So I'm just going to pop this open here so we can see that. You might see, if you're working on a very short-term project and you're working quickly, perhaps you want to do it on an hourly basis. Maybe you want to go daily. Perhaps you want to go weekly, monthly, or we can also do manual. So we can have different timings for different types of schedules. So this might make sense if you have different types of schedules in your database. So turnarounds you might want to have, on demand, maybe capital programs once a week, maybe before you do like a snapshot or some sort of reporting. Um, or maybe you want to do monthly if you're doing some cost reporting. So these are all configurable, especially if you have, your large corporate environments where you're going to see all kinds of different types of projects. So right now, we are looking at the schedule metrics. So we've got duration, float, logic, leads and lags, uh, a long lead or long leg or lead, and maybe logic types. The easiest or to follow is a finish to start. So maybe you want the majority of your activities that their relationships are finished to start. You can set that and have it check. We also have, do we have any activity types with a start to finish? That might be something you might be concerned with. There are some companies who don't even allow that type of logic in their schedule. So you can flag that and you can take a look at it. Um, we also have our constraints here, as well as whether resources um, are assigned and across the board there. You may not want to use all of these metrics, and so that really is it's configurable, as Nicole said. So I'm going to go in and let's take a look at the type of criteria that you would be looking at for schedules. So I'm just going to open up another layout. So on this layout, we can see that each metric has a configuration for what will flag red, yellow, or green. Um, we have criteria where we see we have like a value in here. So in the case of this high duration, this is going to vary depending on your type of schedule. So maybe the turnarounds might be only a shift or two. A capital might be a few weeks. So you want to set your duration in hours because that's how Primavera stores duration, um, to whatever that threshold is. So let's say this is we're wanting to lower that high duration tolerance to 240 hours. The great thing about this is that you could include these on templates. So, for specific types of projects, you could have a template that set all these metrics for you, and then you could um, change them either as the project moves forward, or perhaps if you have some specific metrics that you want for any particular project. The same holds true for all of these other metrics that are along here. What makes sense on your project? Um, are you going to run it at all? Are you going to have what type? You know, are you even going to check for some of these items? Now you'll also notice that we have a percentage on some of our checks. And what this does is that essentially this is saying in the case of high float, that 10%, if I have more than 10% of my activities or 10 out of 100 that are not conforming to my metric, that I want to have it flagged red. If it's anything under 10% in this case, it would be flagged green. So maybe I'd want to change some of these depending on what type of schedule is. So maybe I want to do 10% on my missing logic there. But we can monitor all of these layers as you're going forward, and these ones, of course, are out of the box. But you can create additional ones depending on what you need. So once I have these set, I can go back and I'm just going to put my layout on again that we looked at with the indicators. And let's say I want to rerun that schedule. So it looks like I didn't refresh over here. I was kind of running through here. So in order to run any schedule on the fly, so to speak, I can at any time, no matter what this frequency is set at, I can go in and I can blank out this last schedule run date in QA, and that's going to indicate to P6-QA to go out, pick up this schedule right now, and run a quality check on it. So once that is completed, we're going to see, as I can see here, I can see that I have dates and times as to when these were actually last run. And once it's completed, I can see that I have, it's been rerun and all of these have been refreshed. It looks like I did pick. I thought I had increased my logic missing by enough that it would have get gone green, but it did not. So this is actually a new type of report um, on that last schedule run, and you can easily see when that was last done. Now, we might want to dig in and see what this all means. So, we have notebook topics that can be produced with each schedule quality run. So, we're looking at schedule quality validations right now. So, I'm just going to go into that particular notebook and take a look at what we're seeing here. What we can see is that we have our check and a description of what it is, and our target. That's the percentage that we put in. So I had just changed that logic to 10%, and so it is reflecting that 10% there. It's giving me an actual percentage, and it is giving me a remaining percentage, and I'll show you what this means a little bit later. But actual in my schedule, I have 5 activities that do not have proper logic on them. That's either missing a predecessor or a successor or both. Now, I can flag ones that I have looked at and said that they're okay, and I'll show you how that works. But this remaining is going to reflect what is remaining after those flags have been set, and you've said I want to ignore these particular activities because I've already looked at them and they're okay. And then the remaining percentage is also going to be calculated there. If you scroll down, you're going to see a little bit more in depth um, information about each one of the checks. So, in the case of my open ends on my logic, I can see that I have 5 that do not have uh, either a predecessor or a successor or both. And I can see if I've overridden any, and I have a total of my activities as well. Now, in this colored chart here with the green bar, this is showing me exactly which activities are not conforming to this particular check. So essentially, I can go in and I can self critique these. I can take a look at each one of these activities and I can decide, is this valid or is this one that I need to maybe ignore because it doesn't fit the normal type of criteria for that particular check. Another way that we can do that is, I'm just going to close that notebook down, is we can go into our activities screen where we can see by activity which activity is actually measuring up and which activity is not measuring up. So I can go in and take a look at, let's say, my logic, and I can easily scroll down and see that I have some that are not conforming to this uh, metric. And I can see on my, say on my extraction here, and it does this frequently. Okay. On my installation of this extraction package, I can see that easily that I don't have a successor on this. So I might want to assign a successor and close up that gap there, and then go down and check the rest of them. I do have the option to just see whether I have a predecessor or a successor that is missing. So I can go along and see easily whether it's the predecessor or the successor that is missing. Now, on these ones, I have a yield sign. I have a yellow indicator on some of these. Now, what this is showing me is I can see that I do have missing successors on this. However, when I take a look, I can see that this is the startup of my plant that's been completed. This is my last activity. And so I don't need any successors on that. And like I said, you could say, all right, I've already looked at this. I know that is okay for this to not have any successors. So I could go and set this blue star. Now, this blue star now becomes an exception to this particular check. So when I rerun, it's going to not count that blue star in with my metrics, and it's going to show me that I have that ignored basically on my project. I can go in and I can see, what kind of leads I have. Do I have leads that I might want to take a look at that are large? So this one has a 200-hour negative lead on it, or lag, as you will. So you can take a look at those, and you can analyze and see what's going on with them. I can see where my logic is, and what type of logic I have set on these. I have a yellow indicator on my level of efforts here, showing me that perhaps I have a finish to finish and I have a start to start. Uh, but because this is a level of effort, these are okay, and I might want to mark these with a blue star. I can also check for my start to finish logic, and I can see that I do have an activity that does have that type of logic in it here. So it gives you an easy way to go in and analyze each one of these metrics by activity and fix up those activities, and then rerun and make sure that you have everything in there as according to what your standards are. So not only do we have, those schedule quality metrics, we also have the business processes that Nicole spoke about. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to show you the business processes that we have here. So here's the indicators for the business processes. I have an activity ID format. So if I have a particular format that I need to follow for each one of my activity IDs, or the majority of them, I could set up that format and check it and see how it is measuring up across my project. I can look for duplicate activity names. So on activity naming, if you have the same name on those activities, on multiple activities, this can be rather confusing if you do, your different layouts and your filtering and so forth. So we're saying here that every activity name must be unique. So you don't have, several activity names saying,
Oops,
commission,
Sue,
commission,
I'm not
commission.
sure if we're hearing you or if it's just me.
Um, is anyone
Can
else having
someone let me
trouble?
know in the chat if they're having trouble hearing Sue?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. If you are unable to hear me at any time, please put in the chat that you can't hear me, so that I can address that. We also have our fixed duration in units here. So perhaps that is the most common um, activity type that you have on your schedule. You can set that and have it check for those, and then flag those ones that don't, so that you can go in and make sure that those are valid activities to not have that activity type on. We can also check for mandatory codes. So mandatory codes to some of our clients are are actually pretty important. Maybe they had corporate reporting that requires mandatory codes to be set on their projects, so that when the reporting is run, they're getting an accurate reflection of what's happening across all of their projects at that point. So we also have, whether you don't have a role, we can look at a primary resource, cost accounts, expense categories, and whether there are steps or not. So again, these are configurable. We can take a look at that. So I'm going to go in and let's take it at the configuration screen for our business processes. So on our business processes, I can see that we have our activity format pattern. So we would put a pattern in here, which is fairly simple. We're going to have a numerical, or excuse me, a character between between 0 and 9 characters. We're going to have, or I'm sorry, we're going to have one character. Then we're going to have one number. We're going to have 3 characters, which is in the parentheses, and then we're going to have a dash, and then we're going to look for 3 numbers there. So we can set that activity pattern. We can also set again those thresholds, those tolerance levels for each one of these metrics. So perhaps it's okay for 10% of our IDs to not fit this format. Maybe our milestones don't fit that format, or some other type of activity. So you're going to be able to set that tolerance there. So as easy as this is, and as you're building your schedule, you also want to be monitoring your schedule as you update. So there are other um, metrics that are going to specifically um, address that. So when you're updating, you're probably going to be wanting to look at um, several items. So, are your durations coming together? How are those doing? Are any of my remaining durations longer than my original duration? This will let me know that activities are getting extended. That maybe they're on time, but they may have started early, but the duration is getting longer, which will have an impact, of course, on your resources as well as your costs. So that can be a helpful flag to have. There are some activities that might be finishing late. They may not be on the critical path, but if this pattern is revealed that things are taking longer, we could probably head that off at the pass and adjust something so that it does not become one of my critical activities. Of course, we want to look at our negative float and see if we've got any negative float on any of our activities. And then we can look at our resources. Are those resources over budget? And do I need to take a look at some of those costs that are on those resources and uh, have that addressed? Or maybe there has been work done on an activity, and there are no resource costs on there, but I know that there's been activity, or there has been work that has been done on those particular activities. Um, we have actual dates that are greater than our data date, which, that might be okay. Maybe they said they're going to finish this week, or something like that. But maybe it's a mistake as well. So we might want to see that, and this will make it much easier to find. Um, if we have an activity that's not being updated, um, and it should have been, we can see that. We can look at our last scheduled date and find out, when was that project last scheduled. If we have a tolerance of it needs to be scheduled at least every 2 weeks, we might want to indicate that to say, hey, we haven't scheduled this project. Take a look at this project. So we have a number of those business processes that can be run there. We're just trying to make it easier to see each one of these processes as you're going forward. Some of the some of the items that we've done for specific clients are, for instance, this project calendar report. We had a client who was in need of knowing if their calendars were lining up and where they saw out of sync calendars, so to speak. So they asked us to create this little report here that is showing each one of the calendars, the days and times that are on that calendar, and setting a flag of a yes or no. Are they mismatched across these calendars? So this was something we did for a specific client, and that they asked for, and we were able to produce this for them. We also have some statistic validations, and these are also some validations that were requested of us. So we've got our number of activities with remaining duration greater than our original duration. Sometimes, if you're sending as a contractor, you're sending in a schedule. Sometimes you need to have like a header sheet or something that is depicting all of these numbers. This is giving you an easy place for a total count for those types of statistics on your projects. So we have done um, some specific validations for several of our customers where they had a need to have something additional than what was basically out of the box and what we could provide to them. Once we do make those for our clients, they are available to every other client who uses P6-QA. I'm going to take a look and see if we have any questions at this point. It looks like we might, and it looks like it was answered. So um, that's great. All right. So if there are no other questions, I don't know if Nicole can hear me still at this
I
point.
I reloaded. I was able
Oh,
to
okay.
get back
Awesome.
connected, but I did miss part of it. Were you able to show the updates on resources and things like that and the details as well?
I did not. I
Okay.
can look at those activities and let me look at some of those business process ones on our projects themselves. So I have an activity ID that is not conforming. I have a couple of them. And this might be okay because of our finished milestone. And you can see that I've already started to mark that I have looked at some of those, and they are fine to not fit into that ID format that I actually set forth there. It looks like my activity names are are good. Um, let's go to our resources here. So I have my resources. Actually, this isn't the one I wanted to look at. I wanted to look at the update one. I apologize. Let me look at the updating one. That one, that's the one I want to look at. There we go. So I can see on this one that according to, my not started activities, I have some that have got some negative float that are involved now. And those always blank out there. But I have some negative floats. So might want to take a look at these and see if there's some way that I can shore that up a bit and get those taken care of. Um, Perhaps I have, and it looks like I've just got a whole lot of good stuff on this one. So I apologize. But if I had, let's say, my resources that didn't have actuals, um, I might want to go and take a look at those actuals and at, at those particular activities and find out, what happened with my resource. That even though I had maybe a started activity, and I wonder if I have.
I think if you just switch projects, Sue, probably to the updated one,
Oh, okay. Yep, yep. You're right. You're right. Let me open
it'll
this one.
probably
Thank you.
better
Yep, it's going to look better there. You're right. That was
for
my
that
one that I was.
particular. Yeah.
All right. So there we go. Now we can see it. So much better. All right. So now I can see, if I go and I look at, I've got my completed, my in progress. I can see I have my actual m- uh, duration is greater than my baseline duration. Um, Go in and take a look at, what has changed here. Why is that different, and analyze that. If I go to my actual dates, um, that this actual date is greater than my data date in this case. So why is that? Is it actually going to be started? Maybe they turned in their progress a little early, whatever. Um, I might want to go and investigate and find out why that is prior to my my data date. And here's the one with the resources as well. So it started, and I don't have any actuals in here for this resource, but there's been work that's been done. So that doesn't make sense. I should have something for my actuals here. Um, if I go over, I can find out that this activity with my last status update uh, was not updated. I needed to have something done with that. My resource is over budget as well. So take a look and say, what happened here? Did it go long? Was there a problem? And be able to analyze that. So again, just some easy ways that you can self-critique, that you can analyze schedules as you're building them, as well as after you're updating and moving forward with your schedule to keep your eye on some of these checks that are going to be important in keeping your schedule aligned.
Yeah, so if you're an owner and you're receiving these schedules, you can run the critique every time you receive them. If you're a contractor and you're trying to critique as you're doing your updating, you can do that before you give it to the owner, right? Because what I would be asking is, well, if you started the work and you're over budget, are you going to put a claim against me? Is there going to be a claim or a lawsuit or some sort of conflict that's going to arise? So you want to make sure that you're dealing with that as things come up. And this is part of what this tool brings to our owner clients. They can critique immediately and get a commitment one way or the other as to what's going on, what caused the impact on these particular activities. These are important things. When you're running big projects, you definitely don't want to have a claim and a dispute at the end. And if you're documenting as you go, it goes a long way, not only to resolving the disputes, but also it gives you a leg up if you end up in court and you have to have backup material. So these are other layers that P6-QA can bring to your team. So I don't see any questions, Sue. So
Okay.
do
All right.
you, I'll grab it back and I'll
Okay.
do the close.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. And I'll get the PowerPoint going again. Okay, well, hopefully you got a good idea of the types of things that you can do with P6-QA. As Sue showed you, we can critique schedules at the beginning, prior to updating, after updating, produce outputs. You can have this sort of output into a BI publisher type of document, so you've got an official record. So the outputs we do with our clients vary depending on their requirements. You can also push the statistics and the information into Power BI if you want to, or Tableau, that sort of reporting. So there's a lot of different ways you can consume the data beyond just P6. But of course, our objective was for this to be a tool that's used regularly by all the scheduling team, not just the senior guy, running it once a month if you're lucky. So the idea was that all the schedulers can do the critiquing as updates are taking place. So let's touch on some of the benefits and the value that is coming to our clients that are using the tool. So some of the examples where we've used this is on a large group, Department of Transportation in the US. And Their team consists of a few super users, if you will, from a third party engineering company that collaborates with them, that partners in partnership with them on running the P6 system. But quite a few of them are not necessarily P6 schedulers. So the point here is they're not all full-time schedulers, and they can take a look and use P6-QA and get a good idea of what's going on with the schedule. So that's an important piece. It sort of gives the responsibility out to a different level of people, which means you can critique schedules quicker. You don't need to be an expert necessarily in P6. And then when there's something a little more complicated, they reach out to the team that have a bit more skills. So that's an important piece, because to understand what's going on with your schedule is hugely important, especially if you've got a program that's got a lot of little projects interlaced together. So understanding the impact from one schedule on others is very important. And this just helps make that much easier, especially because they're all being critiqued in the same place in one master file, if you will. And then, so the other feedback is raising the standards. So that's another key thing. You don't want one project to maybe limp behind because they don't have a skilled team of P6 users on that project. So this helps raise the standards and improve the skill set within your group without, in a very dynamic, inexpensive and very consistent way. So that's an important thing. And what we've seen with many groups is often the lead scheduler, the senior scheduler, ends up becoming the pinch point because they're too busy and they don't have time necessarily to give all the help and feedback. So this really helps spread that out, which is an important thing. So now I do not need to ask my lead scheduler every time for help when I get a contractor scheduler. So that's a very important thing. It empowers the different people who are responsible, which is a very big thing. So the speed in which you can critique a schedule is also very, very, very important here. So I was working with a developer in New York City doing a huge project with thousands of activities. This is actually a quote from this project. And, you know, we were doing some work with them on their P6. He got a new schedule from the contractor. He's the finance CFO. And he's like, can you critique this for me? So within just a few hours, I loaded up P6-QA. We ran through just some standard checks, and immediately I could critique within a few hours of 8,000 activity schedule. And I didn't know anything much about the format or anything. I could tell that the critical path was inconsistent. I could tell that activities were all over the place in terms of durations. There was lots and lots of logic missing. So that was very important. Within a few hours, I was able to give him enough feedback for him to go and get, with the contractor and explain that they needed to provide a new schedule. What they had presented was not adequate. So that's a very big thing. When you're running that particular project was a $600 million project, a very, very expensive project in New York City. And he paid us a few $1,000s at most to do the critique. Okay, so it's very important. The tool can be used in so many different ways, and the point is really that it's very dynamic, very flexible, and you can add additional checks as well to the system. Okay. So hopefully you saw some different ideas, different food for thought. We'll open it up for a few more questions if there are any. And if not, I do want to thank you for attending the webinar. Hopefully, again, you saw some interesting things, maybe some gaps that we can help you fill within your team on how they use P6. We've got a lot of different add-ons. We've been in this business for 27 years, and we've had programmers on our team from the very beginning because we did integrations from the very beginning. So that's where we've been able to produce a lot of add-on complementary tools to all of the Oracle Primavera suite of products. And of course, today we're looking at P6. So we've got tools that help you move data in and out. That would be our P6 loader, with uses Excel. We've got other tools that help you look at schedules if you're receiving a lot of imports. So our scrubber tool could be interesting there. We've got updating tools. So if you struggle with updating, which can be quite a difficult one, you put all this great schedule together and then it's not getting updated as regularly as you would like. So we've got our TAPS tool, which is a barcode scanning updater. We've got our CAPS tool, which is a tabular grid format updater. We also sell Team Member, so that's another option for updating. So if you're struggling with updating, look at some of those different tools as well. And I'm sure I've missed some, but look at our website, look for our webinar schedule. Again, we've got many add-on tools for P6 Unifier as well. So just reach out, see if there's anything that we can help you with. So I've got Sue's info there. Donna can chat her info in as well. She's in the Philippines, so she might be closer to you and easier to get in contact. So that will give you another option there. And if you do want us to follow up, go ahead and put in this quick poll if there's a way that you'd like us to follow up, if you want us to give you a call, if you want just to stay on the mailing list, or if you would like, if you think there's someone that you want to show the solution to, just go ahead and let us know. That just makes it easier for us to keep in contact and make sure that we're reaching out appropriately to you. Okay, perfect. So I don't see any questions yet. We can definitely stay on for a little bit longer if there are some questions that come through, and we can try and address them. And, if you think of some questions after the webinar, go ahead and just send an email through and we'll address it that way.